You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio, man. We are here once again, and today we have another show lined up for y'all. We're going to talk to our special guest. Today is all about personal branding. So if you have a small business, if you're a leadership coach, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in any kind of development skills, you need to tune in today's show. We're going to talk to the one and only Tristan Thibodeau. She is a Rebel Brand Strategist, and we're going to learn everything about her personal story and how she got to where she is today. So first and foremost, Tristan, I want to welcome you to the show and say, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so good, and I could listen to your voice all day long. Like I said, it is like butter, and I'm just so excited to be here with your community.
I appreciate that. So, man, first and foremost, I said in the intro that you're the Rebel Brand Strategist, and you're the founder of Womn Haus, and that is where you have a team. It's not just you; you have a whole team of people that's providing design services for entrepreneurs who are basically trying to separate themselves from everybody else. So, what's your backstory? How did you get involved into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I come from a pretty long line of entrepreneurs. I'm from an extremely small town in rural Ohio where there's really not a lot of industry, not a lot of opportunity. And for better or for worse, many of my family members took it upon themselves to make something of their skill sets and their expertise. We have people that have owned brick and mortar businesses in my family, service-based, product-based. And really that just kind of taught me that if you have the mindset of making the most of yourself, of believing that you have a special skill set or expertise that is valuable to others, and if you kind of have that hustle or that resilience to go out there, fall on your face, pick yourself back up and figure it out, that you can make something of yourself and that you can be in control of where you go with your career. So that was always just super cool to observe as a kid, and to be able to go into my family's businesses and to be able to go to work with some of my family members who were entrepreneurs and watch how different it was in that type of a professional setting versus going into a 9-to-5. Like I said, I grew up in a pretty small town, so I have had some sort of a job since I was 11 or 12 years old, whether it was like chucking papers or scooping ice cream or serving food at a restaurant. I've always had a job, and just observing the differences between being an entrepreneur and being an employee were so black and white to me that I just knew I wanted to be in control of my career. I wanted to be in control of how much I earned, my earning potential, and also just where I went in terms of living or how I worked or when I worked. And that's really what fueled me to become an entrepreneur and start my own business straight out of grad school pretty much back in 2016.
And we just started this month, November. We basically, as entrepreneurs or aspiring to be entrepreneurs, we have November and December, and this year is gone. And we're going to be getting ready for the new year. What's some of the things that you are seeing as far as trends that could be useful, and maybe some that we probably should stay away from?
Trends for starting businesses?
Well, just like strategy and people posting, using social media. TikTok is like the hottest conversation right now. What's some of the trends that you see with just branding and pushing your brand and marketing yourself that we
Yeah.
could use, and maybe some that we probably shouldn't, use as much?
Yeah, well, I can definitely talk about some that you should stay away from that are trending for for better or for worse, are trending or really popular right now that you should stay away from, and then some that you should really lean into. So in terms of trends that you should stay away from, there is a lot of, I'm just going to call it greenwashing. And for lack of a better term, that is basically using words or terms or phrases that don't really have a standardized definition to kind of mask things that you don't want consumers to know about. So whether you're a personal brand and you're trying to maybe glamorize some things from your past, or maybe mistakes that you've made in your career, or maybe you were fired or let go or something like that, it's always best to be honest and straightforward and to tell a story that's authentic rather than trying to, make yourself look better or make your business look better than what your practices or what your behaviors are actually showcasing. So the biggest thing moving forward is consumers care about authenticity and they care about transparency. And I'm not even so much talking about authenticity from the standpoint of tell me who you are. It's more so, yes, tell me who you are, but why should I care? Why is it that what you're doing is important, and what are your practices and what are your standards, whether you're product based or service based? I think our ethics as a culture of consumers are starting to become a lot stronger, which is incredible. Like, we need more conscientiousness around consumption and around the environment, and we need more conscientiousness around inclusivity and who's being left out of our services or our products. And trying to hide those things is a very common trend within big businesses that are trying to maintain their public perception or trying to maintain a good image. And all that does is it digs you a deeper and a deeper and a deeper hole, because today's consumers are savvy. They're smart. They're going to research. They're going to find the things that you're not being truthful or honest about. So it's always best to just face those things head on, disclaim or disclose what it is that maybe isn't as strong as you would like it to be, or isn't as clear or as inclusive or eco-friendly or whatever it may be as you would like it to be. But then hold yourself accountable and set a target date for when you want those things to change. That way the public at least knows that, hey, this is an area we're working on improving, rather than just kind of sweeping it under the rug and trying to hide it. That's just not going to work with today's consumers. They're smart, they're savvy, and they are going to sniff it out before you can even, think on your feet. So that's one big trend I'm seeing, that's getting a lot of businesses and a lot of leaders into deep, deep waters that you really can't avoid by being transparent and also just saying, hey, we're working on solving these problems. We acknowledge that these are a weak point within our business, and this is the target date for when we want these problems or these challenges to be resolved.
Once again, listen to I'm Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Tristan Thibodeau. And yeah, I mean, when people are being themselves, it's hard to not do that, if that makes sense. I mean, I think we overcomplicate things a lot. Everyone wants to learn, man, how do I, exercise and gain muscle? Well, I mean, don't take my advice. I'm skinny. But my point is stay in your lane. Like, don't act like, oh, I'm gonna teach everybody how to gain muscle, and you barely make, 120 pounds. Like, it's like, just stay in your lane. And if you are trying to aspire to be in that situation, then always surround yourself with someone who's actually going to get you there. Because this whole social media, I make one post, I'm a brilliant guru, and I'm the smartest person on the block because, I watch Gary V talk for 10 hours, and all of a sudden, I'm the smartest person in the room because I'm just doing what Gary V told me to do. But how many years have you had as far as experience goes? Because that's what Gary V has. I think the more we attend to what we have and what we can work with, that's our true power.
Yeah, you got to have integrity with what you do. And just to kind of bring it back to the topic of personal branding, what I kind of breached, that topic has a lot to do with business positioning in terms of business brand positioning. But even from a personal brand standpoint, one of the best things that you can do as a personal brand, as somebody that's running a business under your personal name, or that is just a leader within your space under your personal name, one of the best things that you can do is to identify your point of view and to identify the stance that you're going to take on not only major issues that our culture is facing or that your consumers are facing, but also take a stance, a very strong polarizing stance about the industry that you're in. And by that, I mean, what opinions do you have about your industry? What opinions do you have about what works, what doesn't work, what's shady, what's in integrity? Because the more you can speak up about your perspective, not only are you building authority, but you're also building trust, because those people that share your opinion or that go, oh my gosh, yeah, that's really true, they're now going to turn to you as the go-to source of information and value within that specific topic. Now, I do want to caution people, if you are somebody that has a very polarizing stance that is maybe counterculture or counter a lot of the more, you know, present day societal issues that we're facing in terms of inclusivity, in terms of LGBTQ inclusivity, racial inclusivity, in terms of eco-friendly. If for whatever reason your stances go about that, I would really just caution you to pause and to reflect on, if I say something now in alignment with this belief or this perspective, can I guarantee that in 3 years from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, my perspective will not have changed? Because what you say today will stay with you years and years and years into the future. And so it's not so much about suppressing your perspective or your beliefs. It's about being very intentional and aware of the ramifications of what you say today, especially for personal brand, because that will stay with you throughout the duration of your career. You really don't want to fight those. You don't want to fight that uphill battle because you said something flippantly early in your career that you now regret later on.
And when people are in that stage of, okay, I have my brand, I have all my websites, I have my social media, I have all my checks, to-do list checks off. What is the secret sauce, if you will, for someone to thrive? Not just exist as a brand, but become a brand that people become addicted to. Like everyone can't stop talking about it because it's so cool, or it's whatever. Like it meets their needs and whatever that is. What is that secret sauce? Is it just what we've been talking about the whole time, or is there a little bit more to it?
Yeah, so it's a super sexy industry term called your onlyness factor. And your onlyness factor is an element that only you as a brand can claim. And to identify that onlyness factor, you have to be very aware of your industry. You have to be very aware of your competitors. And you also have to be very analytical and observant about who you are as a business or who you are as a personal brand, to be able to identify what is the thing that we do that nobody else does, that we can truly say we are the only ones that do that. Because when you identify that onlyness factor, number one, you create an insurpassable barrier to competition. Nobody can come up against you because you have identified something that only you offer or only you provide. The next thing is that you are going to be able to use that onlyness factor in your brand story, in your brand communications, in your brand content, in your brand marketing, in your PR, basically anything that you do, to be able to build that brand name association that is linked to something that is truly unique to you. So that's why I love to call myself like the Rebel Brand Strategist, is that differentiation and that onlyness factor really has to do with being willing to go against the grain and being willing to do something that a lot of other brands are not, for the sake of innovation, but also for the sake of differentiation. So that's kind of the secret, that secret sauce element, that if you can take the time and work with somebody that knows how to help you identify that onlyness factor, you're golden, you're solid. That will be the foundation of your sales, the foundation of your marketing, the foundation of your advertising. Everything can ride on that and successfully ride on that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of practices in today, especially for those just getting started, they want to follow all the hot things that are happening on social media versus what I do now. Like what's the right balance to where you want to respect what your industry is doing, but you don't want to blend in so much that you don't know who you are.
Exactly.
When you are trying to keep yourself different from blending in, what's some of the best practices one can do daily to make sure that they are not getting caught up in the algorithm of, oh, let me look like so and so, let me look like this brand, because they are getting all these, engagement or whatever. What are some of the best practices that entrepreneurs can use for their personal brand when they are trying to keep themselves from blending in too much?
Again, identifying that loneliness factor and using that as much as you can, pulling that into as much of your content as possible. But even though you're a personal brand and you're not maybe a formal company with a huge amount of team members, even if it's just you, or maybe you are a personal brand that has a team under you, having something called brand guidelines, which is basically a roadmap of your brand voice, your brand positioning, what differentiates you, who your competitors are, and also factors of your brand that are going to help you know what makes you unique in terms of the way that you speak, the way that you present content, the way you educate. All of those things, having them in clearly defined guidelines is something that will give you a roadmap and kind of give you that clarity when maybe there is a trend going around that would be really fun to do, but then also would be great for the visibility and the exposure. How can we put our spin on this? How do we put our spin on this so that it's not just another replicated piece of the same trend that everybody's seen? Those guidelines are going to help you put your spin on everything, because sometimes, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If there's a trend that's working, it's working for a reason, but you still want to put your spin on it. Same thing with advertising. There's certain models of paid advertising that just work. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but it does need to speak to what differentiates you as a brand, and it does need to speak to your core purpose and the value that you're providing to your consumers. So I would say more than anything, establishing some sort of guidelines, whether that's an official guidebook, whether that's something as simple as an outline, or even if that's a few questions that you ask before you write content or write a blog or write a newsletter or post on LinkedIn or whatever it will be, that can help you kind of check the boxes of this is on brand or no, this is not on brand, and we need to adapt these things so that it is on brand for us.
So, funny story, by the way, we're talking to Tristan Thibodeau. Funny story is when I was late to get on TikTok, I thought my ticket to fame would be, man, let's be a comedian. Because I do want to be a comedian, like in my afterlife, something like that. But I'm in the present life. And I had to remember, hard knocks. When I first tried to be funny on TikTok, yeah, it was working, but I kept cringing every time. I kept watching my videos because I'm like, you know, I gotta choose one or the other. I can't do everything. Try to be funny, try to be inspiring, try to, promote music and try to promote interviews. I can't do it all like a buffet line. So I had to learn the hard way. Like, all right, if I want to do these things, then I need to at least make separate pages. But one thing I'll ask you, when you're working with your clients, do you ever come across a client who is trying to do too many different things?
More times than not, entrepreneurs try to do too many things at once. And that's kind of just the way that we're made up. We see opportunity, we see problems as having solutions, and we always want to expand and kind of, go outside the lines, because that's part of our creative process. At least my interpretation of entrepreneurs is that we always take on more than we can handle. But the biggest thing in terms of, taking on too much is making sure that whatever you're doing right now is aligned with the goals that are relative to the objectives that you've set. So again, that goes back to brand guidelines. Like, what are we trying to accomplish this year, and your brand strategy for the year? What are our main goals to accomplish this year? Breaking that down into quarters. And then if you have the idea or the motivation or the inspiration to take something else on, is that supporting our current goals, or is that something that can come down the pipeline in the future? Some ideas are amazing. They're just not good ideas for right now because there's no room for them, there's no time for them, there's no resources for them, whatever it may be. But that doesn't mean that they can't come later down the pipeline. So if you have your brand strategy in place that informs what your goals are in terms of marketing for the year and positioning and communications for the year, and you have guidelines to tell you what your positioning is, what your voice is, what your story is, who your audience is, you can kind of use those things to check box or to, audit potential new ideas for your business against those things. And then it's just a matter of, can this be done now, or does it need to come in a later pipeline? But it's a very common problem that entrepreneurs have, is we bite off way more than we can chew.
Right. Once again, talking to our guest for today, Tristan Thibodeau. And like we've been talking about a common thing with branding, personal branding, and also developing as an entrepreneur. But you and your team, you have a specialty. Obviously, you help your clients with increasing their revenue and building their grassroots. But what separates you and from everybody else is your team. You help them actually disrupt the industry that they're in, and that ties to what you talk about being the rebel. And is being the rebel also just not being afraid to lead something that is different versus just doing it because, oh yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm supposed to be doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. The way I think of being a rebel or being an innovator or being an industry disruptor is you're willing to look at the way things have been done and ask the question, how can we do this better? How can we do this differently? And sometimes that means completely breaking the model and introducing something brand new. If you kind of look at times where the economy has tanked, like we're in a recession now, if you look at huge situations with public health, like with the COVID pandemic, you see disruption happening as a cause and effect. So for example, home delivery groceries became a necessity because of the circumstances of the pandemic, but that completely disrupted the grocery store model. Now people are utilizing that because they find it massively convenient, whereas before that wasn't an option. So if you kind of switch the way that you look at being a rebel or being a disruptor as being somebody that comes into a model of the status quo or the model of this is how we've always done it, and asking, but how can we do it better? What do consumers need? Sure, this is the way they've been doing it, but are they doing that because there's no other option? Or are they doing that because they actually prefer to do it that way? So when you look at it that way, when you look at being a rebel and being a disruptor that way, what you're really looking at is, how can we innovate? How can we provide even better products, services, and offerings to consumers to move the industry forward and to kind of, break that status quo of the good old days of this is how we've always done it, and introducing something brand new that introduces brand new industries, brand new markets, but also better serves consumers, which at the end of the day, as a business owner, you are in the business of service. You are in the business of providing value to your consumers. And in exchange, they pay you for that. So if you're the person that's providing the most value and you're doing that by introducing something new that solves problems that consumers didn't even know that they had, you are going to come out on top.
Once again, listen to I'm Refocused Radio, talking to Tristan Thibodeau. And man, when it comes to social media, you have Instagram, people can follow you on TikTok, people can go to the website, wildwomanhaus.com. You also been featured in Forbes.
Yes, I
And
have.
before we sign off, I gotta have that story. How in the world did that happen? Because every entrepreneur has a dream to see themselves in Forbes one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was, I mean, a career making, like, whoa, just stepping back and letting that sink in moment for me. Um, the way that it works for anybody that has ambitions to be featured in really big editorials like that, and Shemaya, I'll send you the link to that article if you want to put it in the show notes or the resources for this so people can go check it out. But the way that that works is, unless you are somebody like a Warren Buffett or just the biggest of the big in your industry, features typically mean that you're working with a PR, a publicist, some sort of agency that pitches you to different writers to help you get picked up. And that is essentially one of the biggest authority building credibility tools that you can use as a personal brand and as a business brand, because you're getting millions and billions of eyeballs, but also you get to say, I'm a Forbes featured expert, which carries a tremendous amount of weight. And these publications are very much earned. They're not given. You can work with a publicist that can pitch you left, right, up, down, day and night, every day of the week. But if you are not press worthy in terms of the sense that you have an important story to tell, you know what makes you unique, and you're timely and relevant in terms of the expertise or the story angle that you want to talk about, if you don't have those things, you're most likely not going to get featured. So that's why putting the time into building your personal brand is so valuable. If you have your eyes on Entrepreneur, Fast, any of those big editorials that are kind of industry leading editorials, get your personal brand on lock and then work with a publicist that knows how to talk to writers within these big editorials and that can help you create a pitch statement that highlights the things that make you special, the things that make you valuable as an expert, and a story angle that is relevant and timely for consumers. So like I said, unless you're one of those big Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett type individuals, most of the people that you're seeing being written about in Forbes or Fast or whatever it may be, those people have been pitched by publicists, but they had to have been press worthy first before they would be commentated on within the article.
And speaking of being a rebel, I'm gonna be a rebel on my own show and say I want to see some new names in
Yes.
2023. I mean, it's been great. Well, it's been like what, 10 years plus. We've been seeing the same names on Forbes and all these major outlets. But I want to see new media companies. I want to see new celebrities. I want to see new faces, like new everything. Because I think if we're too comfortable riding someone else's like train, we don't hop off and get on our very own. And it's nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I don't know emails, but I'm not saying is anything wrong with the elites we have. But I just want to see the new ones. I want to see the next generation of leaders. Even they're like 80 years old. I don't care. If you're the next wave, the next chapter of entrepreneurs and business owners and movers and shakers. I just want new, man. I want that new fire. I want to be inspired by new people. Like, where's Gary V. Jr., you know? I mean, that's just my feeling. That's my rebel talking.
I'm right there with you. And the way to do that is just, like I said, differentiating yourself, identifying that onlyness factor, and just riding that train as long as you can until you either have to pivot or kind of reinvent your onlyness factor. But giving yourself that advantage and knowing how to stand out no matter how saturated your industry is one of the most powerful assets and tools that you can use to become one of those go-to names in your industry.
You need to make a t-shirt because I had a visual of how to unsaturate, and it's like the next line is be you.
That's good. That's your idea. You should run with that. Get some merch
Uh,
going.
I got enough things going on the fire,
Yeah.
but once again, talking to Tristan Thibodeau, you can go to her website. She also, I'll get a website real quick, wildwomanhaus.com, but you have a free um, built to scale assessment that people can check out. It's a free tool to help people kind of identify the aspect of the brand, and that will kind of get the ball rolling. So anything that I didn't cover in that, what's some of the things people can expect when they visit your website?
So the website is the hub for pick your poison based on what you're looking for. You're going to be able to find the podcast that I host, which centers a lot around female and female identifying entrepreneurs, tips for growing your brand and just being a weapon with your marketing. That's called the Wild Woman Hotline. All of our social links you'll be able to find there. And then the built to scale assessment that you're talking about, it's a really short assessment that asks you a different series of questions on all aspects of your brand. And what it does is it identifies the weakest link within your brand and then gives you free resources on how to get started strengthening that. So that is all free on the website as well. You can go take that and start to grow your brand ASAP.
And that's awesome. And the credits that I see on the website is 100% legit, amazing, big brand names. And I feel like when people are trying to get to that big brand status, stop trying to speed up the process. Learn to take your time but always be accountable for where you are and have uh, a inventory of where you are. And if you feel like you're going too slow, then maybe it's time to hang out with some better minds. Because I feel like if you always remain comfortable, you start to do the insanity thing, do the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
being uncomfortable actually helps you speed up the process. It's like reverse. Being too comfortable, it slows down the process. But being uncomfortable and not getting overwhelmed and learning how to keep yourself calm, that actually would speed up the process because it makes you start thinking and doing things that you never would have done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That was my
100%.
little church segment there.
I love it. It's golden.
But once again, it's a true story because I recently had someone uh, help speed up the process for me by challenging me to do some things I was nervous about doing. And, you know, amazing things are happening. But people like you on the show is what makes the show great. So when people are learning from you, they can light the candle for the next person. So once again, you listen to Army Focus Radio, talking to Tristan Thibodeau. Go to her website that you can learn a lot from and get her resources and podcasts. She has a podcast show as well. It's the Wild Woman Hotline. So that's something you might want to check out. But check out our website, wildwomanhaus.com. I want to say thank you to Tristan Thibodeau for taking time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you too. Thank you so much.